My name is Susan Parker. I am 34 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my mother threw my sister a surprise party and never thought to tell me. I still sent the gift. I still wrote the card. I still signed it with love. And then my grandmother called me and said 7 words that ended 11 years of silence in this family. Come over alone. Don't tell your mother. What was inside the cedar box on her kitchen table is the reason I am telling you this now. It is the reason I drove 90 minutes the next morning on a Wednesday in October with both hands firm at 10 and 2. It is the reason the dining room of my parents' house 6 weeks later became the quietest room I have ever stood in. Let me show you. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is where quiet women tell the loudest stories about families, about boundaries, about the documents that finally speak the truth out loud. If this is your first time here, you might want to settle in. Drop a comment when something lands. And be sure to subscribe. I should probably tell you who I am before I tell you what they did. I am a contracts attorney at a mid-sized firm in Hartford, Connecticut. I have been there for 6 years. I am at my desk by 7:15 every morning. I run 3 miles before that in the dark in winter and in the soft gray of summer. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in West Hartford that I have paid for entirely by myself since I was 26. The furniture is from IKEA. The couch is from a Goodwill on New Britain Avenue. I bought it on a Tuesday and reupholstered it on a Sunday, and I have never once asked anyone in my family for a single dollar. My family has a name for this. They call it being self-sufficient. They have called me self-sufficient since I was 8 years old. And for most of my life, I wore that word like a Girl Scout sash. I was proud of it. I thought it meant I was strong. I thought it meant I was the kind of woman who didn't need anyone to remember her birthday, who didn't need a hand on her shoulder at her grandfather's funeral, who didn't need an invitation to her own sister's surprise party. I had spent my 20s learning how to take up less space. Apparently, I had become very good at it. At 34, I was beginning to wonder when self-sufficient had quietly become easy to overlook. I want to tell you that I had figured this out before October. I had not. October figured it out for me. Let me go back, because if you are going to understand the party, you have to understand the parties before the party. My 30th birthday. My mother forgot until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She called me from the parking lot of a Costco. The wind was loud. She said, "Oh, sweetie, happy birthday." I was going to bake, but the day got away from me. What about brunch next Sunday? Next Sunday became the following Sunday, became somehow the following March. My sister Vanessa's 30th birthday 6 months later. My mother catered for 40 people. There was a cake from a French bakery in Avon, and a calligraphed seating chart, and an ice sculpture that looked distantly like a flamingo. My mother had been planning it since June. My MBA graduation 10 years ago. My parents skipped the ceremony for Vanessa's wedding tasting. They told me, Sunday we'll do something Sunday. Sunday became Thursday. Thursday became never. I framed my own diploma. It hangs over the IKEA dresser. Standing beside my grandfather's casket at 23, my mother leaned over and asked me to help carry Vanessa's purse because Vanessa was crying. I had a full transcript of forgottens. I simply had not read it back to myself in order yet. I want to be clear with you about one thing. I never believed my mother was cruel. I thought she was a woman who loved a daughter who needed her loudly, and that I was the other daughter, the quiet one, the one she could rest from. I had built an entire identity around that interpretation. It was, it turns out, the most costly interpretation of my life. The Tuesday I found out about the party was a Tuesday like any other. Cold coffee, 3 contracts open, Outlook full. I was scrolling Instagram during my second cup, which I should not have been doing at 10 in the morning, but I was. My cousin Madison had posted to her story. Balloons in my parents' backyard. A cake, 22 faces I recognized. The text overlay said in pink, "Surprise." My favorite cousin Vanessa is 31. I zoomed in on the photo. My mother was in the center laughing, wearing the cashmere sweater I had given her for Christmas. My father was at the grill. Brett, my brother-in-law, was carrying a tray of glasses. 22 people. My uncle. My 2 aunts. Both of my grandparents on my father's side. Madison Tyler, a neighbor. The date stamp read Saturday, 2 days earlier. I had not been told. I had not been called. I had not been mentioned. I set my phone down on the desk. Screen up. I did not pick it up for a full minute. I looked at the contract on my monitor and read 3 sentences without absorbing a single word. Then I picked up my phone and took a screenshot. I texted it to nobody. I simply kept it. I finished my coffee. I closed the contract. I opened a new tab and looked up, for no reason I could name, the difference between revocable and irrevocable trusts under Connecticut law. I read for 40 minutes. I went to a 1 o'clock meeting and asked thoughtful questions. I called my mother at 7 that evening. She picked up on the 4th ring. "Hi, sweetie," she said. "Hi, Mom. How was your day?" "Fine." "Was there a party for Vanessa on Saturday?" There was a pause. It was longer than it needed to be. "Oh, sweetheart, we were going to tell you. It just came together so fast." I let the silence sit. Madison posted 3 weeks of planning. Another pause. I could hear her opening a cupboard. "Honey, your father and we know how you are about big crowds and you've been so swamped with work. And Vanessa, you know how she gets when she's stressed and she's been going through that thing with Brett's mom and we just thought, what did you think?" She exhaled. It was the exhale of a woman about to say a sentence she had already rehearsed. "I thought you'd be too busy." I closed my eyes. I had heard this sentence before. I had heard a version of it on my 30th birthday when she said the day got away from me. I had heard it on graduation Sunday when she said we'll do something later. I had heard it for 34 years, just rephrased every time. "Mom," I said. I needed to know my sister was turning 31. Well, I'm telling you now. Knowing isn't the same as being invited. "Susan, please don't be dramatic. We're a family." I did not answer that. I said goodnight and I hung up first. I sat on the couch I had bought for $200 on a Tuesday. I set my phone on the IKEA coffee table. Then I stood up and got my coat. There is a stationery store on Pratt Street in downtown Hartford that stays open until 8 on weeknights. I knew it would be open. I had been there before to buy thank you cards for clients. I parked. I walked in. I chose a hand-pressed card, cream linen with gold sprigs of something pressed into the front. $8. I paid in cash. I took the card home. I sat at my desk under the lamp. I wrote in my careful contracts attorney handwriting. "Vanessa, happy 31st. I hope this year brings you everything you want it to. With love, Susan." I read it. I read it again. I did not cross anything out. Then I went online and ordered the dip candle Vanessa had been posting about for 6 months. Fijier $180 next day shipping. I had it sent to her address. The shipping label populated automatically because I had ordered her things before. The address line read 12, Maple Lane, Litchfield, Connecticut, my grandfather's old farmhouse. Vanessa had been living there rent-free since the spring of 2019. I had never asked how that arrangement worked. I had never thought to ask. The house had gone to my mother, somebody had explained at the funeral, for safekeeping. Vanessa had needed a place after the breakup with the Chicago boyfriend. My mother had given her one. I had been 28 deep in bar exams and contracts, and I had nodded and never pursued it. You can probably see from where you are sitting what I could not see from where I was sitting. That was the problem with being self-sufficient. I had spent 34 years never looking under the rug. That Sunday, my mother invited me to lunch to make up for it. Her words. I went. I drove 40 minutes to the house I grew up in West Hartford. I parked behind Vanessa's white Lexus in the driveway. I rang the doorbell. My mother hugged me long. Vanessa hugged me too, smelled like a perfume I had not bought her, and said, "You look so tired, sis. You really need to take some time off." "I'm fine," I said. "Thanks." The roast was on the table by the time I sat down. My father carved. My mother passed the beans. Vanessa described her birthday in full detail. The surprise, the cake, the way she had screamed when she walked in. My mother laughed at every part of the story, even though she had been there for all of it. Halfway through the meal, I got up to refill my water from the kitchen pitcher. On the kitchen counter, between the toaster and a stack of mail, sat my dip candle unopened, the white box pristine. On top of it, the cream linen card I had written unopened, the envelope still sealed, my handwriting visible across the front. Beneath both of them, a pizza coupon. I did not say anything. I refilled my water. I returned to the dining room. I finished the beans. I want you to know that I did not cry in the car. I did not pound the steering wheel. I drove home at the speed limit with NPR on softly. I went to the gym. I walked on the treadmill for 40 minutes, but somewhere in the back of my mind, a door I had kept locked for 11 years began very quietly to creak. Let me tell you about my grandfather, because the story does not make sense without him. His name was Theodore Whitaker. We called him Ted. He was my mother's father, and he lived in a white farmhouse at 12 Maple Lane in Litchfield on 3 acres he had purchased in 1971 with money he had earned as a high school physics teacher. He retired in 1998. He repaired the porch every other summer. He had a vegetable garden that mostly grew tomatoes and disappointment. When I was 19, I started driving up to his farmhouse on weekends home from law school. My grandmother was very much alive. She stayed in Litchfield with him only part of the time, and they had a complicated marriage. I am not going to litigate that here. The point is he was often alone, and I started going up. I did his taxes for the pleasure of it. I read estate law textbooks aloud on the porch while he weeded. He once said to me with one of his slow Connecticut grins, "Susie, the law is the only family that doesn't play favorites." In the spring of 2015, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He had 3 months. I drove up every weekend from school. I held his hand when the morphine made him believe it was 1974. Vanessa came once, for 4 hours on Mother's Day. She cried in the kitchen, and my mother told me to bring her tissues. At the funeral, my mother told me, leaning over the casket, to help Vanessa pull herself together. I did. I was 23. I had loved my grandfather in a way that did not have to be earned, which was the only love in my family that never asked for anything in return. The house, my mother explained that afternoon, would come to her for safekeeping. I did not ask any follow-up questions. I was 23. That was the mistake. I want to introduce you to one more person before we get to the cedar box, because she is the one who placed it there. My grandmother, Vivian Whitaker, is 79 years old. She lives alone now in the old farmhouse her sister left her in Litchfield County, about 40 minutes north of where my grandfather's house used to be. She wears wool cardigans in October. She does not own a microwave. She makes coffee on a stovetop percolator and pours it into a mug that says, "World's okay, Grandma," which my cousin Tyler gave her as a joke in 2011. She does not call me often, maybe 4 times a year. She is not the kind of woman who calls for small talk. The call came 21 days after the surprise party. It was a Wednesday, 7:14 in the evening. I was in my apartment in pajamas making pasta. The water was just beginning to boil. The screen lit up. Grandma Vivian. I picked up brightly. I always picked up brightly with her because she liked it when I sounded like a normal granddaughter, which I rarely managed. "Hi, Grandma." "Susan." Just that. Just my name. No hello. I turned the burner down to 2. "Grandma, is everything okay?" She said it like she had been rehearsing. "Come over alone. Don't tell your mother." I gripped the wooden spoon. "Grandma, what's wrong?" "I need you to come tomorrow morning before 9. Don't bring anything. Don't tell anyone where you are going." "Grandma, is it your health?" "Are you?" "It is not my health." "I will see you tomorrow." She hung up before I could finish. My pasta water boiled over and hissed onto the burner. I stared at my own stove for what was probably 20 seconds. The smell of scorched starch filled the kitchen. She had not asked me to come alone in 11 years. The last time, my grandfather had been dying. I left my apartment at 5:45 the next morning. The sky was still that flat October purple before sunrise. I had not slept much. I had not packed anything because she had told me not to. The drive to Litchfield County takes about 90 minutes if you take the back roads. I took the back roads. Route 8 to Route 4 to Route 63. Maple trees in their second week of color. Cell service drops in 3 different valleys. I had spent the night turning over every possibility. Cancer, stroke, dementia. My mother had done something. My grandmother had remembered something. Someone had died and I had not yet been told because I was the one who would handle the arrangements and they wanted me well rested. I rehearsed my face for each possibility. I rehearsed sentences. I am a contracts attorney. I rehearse for a living. I pulled into her driveway at 7:30. Gravel beneath the tires, the farmhouse white clapboard, blue shutters, the porch swing she had repainted in August. She opened the door before I could knock. She was in her wool cardigan and slippers, her hair pinned back the way she pins it when she has a long morning planned. "Come in, coffee's on." She did not hug me. My grandmother is not a hugger. I followed her into the kitchen. It smelled like burnt toast and lavender. Her percolator was steaming. On the counter, 2 mugs already poured. "Sit, Susan." I sat at the kitchen table. She poured cream into both mugs from a small glass pitcher. Her hands were trembling slightly. I had never seen my grandmother's hands tremble. She did not sit yet. She walked into the dining room and came back carrying something I had not seen since I was 12. A small cedar box, old wood, dark with age, brass corners, about the size of a hardcover book. She placed it on the table between us. "Grandma." "Susan, before you open it, I need to say 2 things." I closed my mouth. She sat across from me. She wrapped both hands around her mug like she was trying to warm them from the inside. "Your grandfather kept this box in his bedroom closet on the top shelf for 15 years. For days before he died, he asked me to put it somewhere safe and only give it to you when I was certain you were ready. That was 11 years ago." I looked at the box. I looked back at her. "Why now?" "Because I saw the photographs from your sister's party, and I watched my own daughter laugh in her own backyard while my oldest granddaughter drank coffee alone in West Hartford. I should have given this to you a long time ago." I told myself I was waiting for the right moment. I was wrong. "I am sorry." I did not say anything. "The second thing. Whatever you decide to do with what is inside is yours to decide. I will support whatever you choose. But you should know, once you open it, you cannot unknow. So open it when you are ready." I picked up my coffee. I drank a careful sip. Then I set the mug down and opened the box. There were 3 things inside. A yellowed envelope addressed in my grandfather's handwriting to Susan. A small brass key, the kind that fits a safe deposit box. And a folded document, 3 pages with a blue notary seal. I unfolded the document first. I read the header. "First codicil to the last will and testament of Theodore J. Whitaker, dated March 17, 2015, 3 months before he died. If you have ever been the so-called fine one in your family, the one who didn't need much, the one who handled things, the one who was easy to skip, I want you to stay with me." There are still 5 pages on that kitchen table. The cedar box is going to come back twice more. Drop a comment if you have ever found something you were not supposed to find. Then hit subscribe. I read the codicil out loud. I always read documents out loud the first time. It is a habit from law school. "I, Theodore J. Whitaker, of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all prior provisions of my last will and testament regarding the real property located at 12 Maple Lane, Litchfield, Connecticut, and the personal trust fund identified as account number 4711 held at First National Bank of Hartford." I stopped. I took a breath. "And I direct that both shall pass directly and irrevocably to my granddaughter Susan Vivian Parker upon my death, free of any control, guardianship, or trusteeship by Carol Whitaker Parker." The next paragraph was financial. "The trust fund balance as of this date stands at $185,000. The deed to 12 Maple Lane is to be transferred to Susan Vivian Parker by my executor within 30 days of probate. Signed, Theodore J. Whitaker. Witnessed by Vivian D. Whitaker and Gregory M. Howerin, Esquire, notarized in Litchfield County, March 17, 2015. I set the document down on the table. My grandmother said, "Now read the letter." I picked up the yellowed envelope. I broke the seal with my thumbnail. 3 pages inside, in my grandfather's slanted blue ink. The opening line said, "Susie, if you are reading this, your grandmother has decided you are ready, which means a great deal of time has passed." I read it slowly. I read the parts about him being proud of me. I read the parts about him being sorry he had not told me in person. I read the part where he said he had waited until he knew he was dying because he had not wanted my mother to fight him while he could still fight back. And then I reached the line. He had written it in the middle of page 2. Same blue ink, same careful hand. He knew I would be passed over. I read the line twice. He kept going. "Your mother loves you the way she knows how, which is less than you deserve. She has always told herself it was kindness. That your sister needed more. It is not kindness. It is a story she tells herself. I will not be here to correct it. So I am correcting it now with paper. The house is yours. The fund is yours. They were always going to be. I set the letter down on top of the codicil very carefully. I did not cry. I had spent 11 years being the daughter who did not need to. I was not going to break that habit while holding the evidence. I looked at my grandmother. Why was this never filed? She nodded slowly. She had been waiting 11 years for that question. Your mother drove to his house the morning after he died. She told me she was going to pack his clothes. She came back to my house with a banker's box. The unsigned working draft from his desk was inside. She burned it in the fireplace at her house on a Saturday. Iwatete. I let that settle on the table next to the codicil and the signed original. She slid the brass key across to me. Safe Deposit Box 0731, First National Bank, Asylum Street Branch, downtown Hartford. Gregory put it there the same afternoon they signed. He told me, Vivian, do not let anyone tell you this didn't happen. I have been paying the box fee for 11 years. $58 a year. $638 total. The most affordable insurance policy of my life. I held the brass key. It was warm from her hand. Why didn't you tell me at the funeral? Because you were 23 and you were grieving and your mother is my daughter. I told myself there was a right moment coming. I have learned this autumn that the right moment never simply arrives. You have to call it. Why did you call it now? Because I scrolled past your sister's birthday photographs on Sunday morning, and I sat in my kitchen and counted 22 faces in your father's backyard and yours was not among them. And I thought Theodore would have stood up and walked out. Grandma, I am not asking you to forgive me. I am just done watching. She placed her hand flat on top of the codicil. Whatever you decide to do, I will testify. I will sign whatever needs signing. Gregory's emails to me are in a folder in my hall closet. Everything I have is yours. I closed my hand around the brass key. I left my grandmother's house at 11:15. I hugged her at the door, which was the first time I had hugged her since the funeral. She did not say I love you. She said, drive carefully and call me when you decide. The cedar box was on the passenger seat. I buckled it in. I do not know why. I think because nothing else in my life that had ever mattered required a seatbelt. I drove south on Route 63. The maple trees were brighter than they had been 3 hours earlier. I want you to know what I was not thinking about. I was not thinking about my mother. I was not thinking about Vanessa. I was not rehearsing a confrontation in my mind. I was not crying. I was not even angry. Not yet. I was thinking about contract law. I was thinking about the Connecticut statute of limitations on breach of fiduciary duty, which is 6 years from discovery, and how today was day one. I was thinking about the small estate affidavit my mother must have filed in April of 2015 and how straightforward it had been, and how it would not have been if anyone had asked a single question. I was thinking about the trust fund and where $185,000 goes when nobody is watching. I was thinking about the greeting card I had sent Vanessa 3 weeks earlier, which had been sitting unopened on a kitchen counter in a house that legally belonged to me. By the time I crossed back into Hartford County, I had composed 3 sentences in my head. The first was, I need an estate attorney who does not know my mother. The second was, I need a copy of every county land record for 12 Maple Lane. The third was, I am not going to raise my voice once. I pulled into my parking lot at 12:52 in the afternoon. I carried the cedar box up 2 flights of stairs. I started typing at 1:10. The first thing I did was log into the Hartford County Land Records portal. I have a subscription through work. I pulled up 12 Maple Lane, Litchfield. The title history scrolled down the screen. 1987 to 2015. Theodore J. Whitaker, sole owner. April 2015, 1 month after he died. Transferred to Carol Whitaker Parker by small estate affidavit filed at the probate court in Litchfield. The affidavit was a 1-page form. I clicked on the scanned PDF. There was my mother's signature. There was the notary stamp, a UPS store on Maple Avenue in Hartford, a $2 stamp, a 2-minute appointment. She had walked into a UPS store on a Wednesday and rewritten my grandfather's final wish for the price of a sandwich. I scrolled further. November 2019. Transferred from Carol Whitaker Parker to Vanessa Whitaker Parker. Consideration listed $1. The deed was a quitclaim signed at a real estate closing office in West Hartford. $1. I pulled out the codicil from the cedar box. I laid it next to my laptop. I read the line about free of any control, guardianship, or trusteeship by Carol Whitaker Parker. Then I read the small estate affidavit, which stated in Box 3 that the deceased left no will and no codicil known to affiant. The affiant being my mother, filed under oath in Connecticut. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a sworn false statement on a probate court filing. That is fraud upon the court. I sat back in my chair. I exhaled slowly. I want to tell you that I felt vindicated. I did not. I felt something colder than that. I felt the way I feel in a deposition when a witness contradicts a document I am already holding. I felt prepared. Then I opened another tab. I typed in Vanessa Parker MBA. LinkedIn came up first. Boston University Questrom School of Business, Master of Business Administration, 2017 to 2019. I knew Boston University's tuition for a 2-year full-time MBA. I had looked it up myself 10 years earlier. $98,000, plus or minus. I opened a third tab. I typed in Vanessa Parker Wedding Mystic Seaport. I started a spreadsheet. I have always loved spreadsheets. They are the composed way my brain processes difficult information. Column A, dates. Column B, source. Column C, amount. Column D, corresponding Vanessa life event. By 2:30 that afternoon, I had 37 rows. The trust fund, account 4711 at First National. My grandmother had given me the account number. Gregory had emailed it to her in 2015 as part of the executor file. I called First National's records department at 2:40. I gave them the account number and my mother's name. I said I was inquiring about a fiduciary matter and would be following up with a subpoena from an estate attorney within the week. I asked for the withdrawal history. The woman on the phone hesitated. I said the necessary words. The trustee is the subject of an inquiry by the beneficiary. She put me through to compliance. By 4 o'clock, I had the printout in my email. Carol Parker, as listed trustee, had made the following withdrawals from account 4711. September 2017, $94,300 wire to Boston University bursar's office. December 2019, $22,800 wire to Lexus Financial Services. August 2022, $31,400 wire to Mystic Seaport Catering and 3 vendor accounts, plus $36,500 in smaller withdrawals across 8 years, listed as household. Total drawn, $185,000. Balance remaining, 0. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the printout. 11 years. A signature on a 1-page form. A $2 notary stamp at a UPS store. A quitclaim deed for $1. A trust fund balance ticking from $185,000 to 0, 1 wire at a time, to fund an MBA I did not get to attend, a Lexus I did not get to drive, and a wedding I did attend, where I had given Vanessa a Cuisinart food processor I had paid for with my own money. I do not break easily. I had not broken at my grandfather's funeral. I had not broken at 30 when my mother forgot. I had not broken at the kitchen counter on Sunday when I saw the unopened card. I broke a little at 4:30 on a Thursday in October, holding a First National printout. Then I closed my laptop. I put my coat on. I walked 1 block to a bar called The Lookout. I ordered a glass of red wine. I took out my phone. I called a man named Mason Wheeler. Mason Wheeler is 41 and runs a 3-partner estate firm out of a converted brownstone on Trumbull Street. I had met him at a Hartford Bar Association mixer in 2024. He had given me his card and told me, half joking, that contracts attorneys make the best estate clients because they actually read the fine print. He picked up on the second ring. Susan Parker. Mason, I need an hour of your time tomorrow morning. It is going to be complicated. 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. 9. I sat in his conference room at 5 minutes to 9 the next morning. I had the cedar box in a tote bag. I laid the codicil, the letter, the brass key, the county records printout, and the First National printout on his table in chronological order. He read for 22 minutes. He took 2 pages of notes. He whistled once softly when he reached the small estate affidavit. The codicil was never filed, he said. Correct. Then it is worse for them and considerably better for you. Connecticut has a 6-year statute of limitations on breach of fiduciary duty, but the discovery rule applies. Your clock started yesterday. I nodded. Susan, I need to be straightforward with you. You are a lawyer. You will want to handle this yourself. Don't. I won't. He set down his pen. Tell me in one sentence what she said to you on the phone that Tuesday. I closed my eyes. She said, I thought you'd be too busy. Mason was quiet for a moment. Susan, your mother said that to you on Tuesday. By Wednesday, your grandmother had handed you 11 years of evidence. You have not been too busy. You have been too kind. I did not respond. We are going to file quietly. We are going to subpoena the bank. We are going to ask your grandmother to swear an affidavit, and then we are going to do this in one room, in person, with everyone present. We drove to First National on Asylum Street that afternoon. Mason and I signed in at the safe deposit desk. The clerk retrieved box 0731 from the wall. I turned the brass key. The lock clicked. Inside the metal drawer, a manila folder. I lifted it out. The folder contained the signed original of the codicil on heavier paper than the copy in the cedar box. Same notary seal. Same blue ink. A second folder underneath held Gregory Howard's email exchanges with my grandmother from March of 2015 through July, when he had filed the codicil in his firm's archive. There were also 2 letters from Gregory to my grandfather confirming the codicil had been executed in accordance with his instructions. Gregory had been thorough. Gregory had been a careful man. Gregory had died in 2018 in a hit-and-run on a road in Avon. The driver had never been found. I do not believe that has anything to do with this story. I want to be clear about that. Sometimes lawyers just die. Mason photographed everything. We returned the originals to the box. We left. The next 6 weeks were quiet. I went to work. I closed 3 contracts. I ran my 3 miles every morning. I responded to my mother's texts with nothing beyond just busy with work, talk soon. I went to my apartment on Friday nights and read Connecticut estate procedure and prepared the way I had prepared for the bar. Mason filed a sealed petition in Hartford Probate Court on the 3rd Tuesday of November. He subpoenaed First National. He drove to my grandmother's farmhouse and took her affidavit. A forensic accountant traced every one of the trust withdrawals. Mason told me on a Thursday in the 2nd week of December that we were ready. I told him I wanted to do it on a Sunday, the same day of the week as the surprise party. I sent the text on a Tuesday afternoon. It went to my mother, copied blind to my father. I'd like to come over Sunday at 2. I have something important to discuss. Please have Dad, Vanessa, and Brett there. I'd also like Aunt Margaret and Aunt Lynn to come if they're available. I added one more line. Grandma will be joining us. I hit send. I set my phone face down on my desk. I returned to my contracts. My mother called within 10 minutes. I picked up on the 2nd ring, because picking up on the 1st ring would have looked rehearsed and picking up on the 4th ring would have looked dismissive. Sweetie, what is this? Why so formal? Can't you just come for dinner? I'd prefer Sunday at 2 with everyone present. Margaret and Lynn don't need to be involved in family business. I'd like them there. You're scaring me, Susan. Is this about the party? Because we already talked about the party and honey. Sunday at 2. She paused. I could hear her breathing shift. Of course, sweetie. Of course. Sunday at 2. I'll make a roast. She hung up. 12 minutes later, Vanessa texted me. Hey sis. Heart emoji. Mom said you have something to share Sunday. Just checking in. You okay? Want to grab coffee before? It was the first time Vanessa had texted me without a request attached in 4 months. I did not answer. If you have ever been the calm one in a chaotic family and felt that calm being mistaken for not caring, I see you. Stay with me. Sunday is 2 beats away. The cedar box is already on my kitchen table. Drop a comment with 1 word that describes how you would have felt holding that brass key. Then hit subscribe so you do not miss what happened in that dining room. I did not answer Vanessa's text. I did not answer the follow-up text 2 hours later, which said, okay, weird vibe, but love you sis. Heart emoji. See you Sunday. I want to tell you what was happening on the other end of that text, though I only learned it later from Aunt Margaret. My mother spent the rest of Tuesday evening making calls. She called Vanessa first. That was the heart emoji text. She called Aunt Margaret next and said in a voice Aunt Margaret described as honey poured over gravel that Susan was having one of her dramatic moments, and would Margaret please come Sunday and help defuse it. Aunt Margaret said she would. My mother called Aunt Lynn at 9. Aunt Lynn was less accommodating about it. Aunt Lynn said, "Carol, what did you do?" And my mother said, "I have no idea what she is talking about." Aunt Lynn told me later she could tell from the cadence of that sentence that my mother knew precisely what she was talking about. Aunt Lynn had been married to my mother's brother for 41 years. She knew her sister-in-law's lying voice better than her own husband's whistle. By Wednesday morning, my cousin Madison had called me. She had heard from her mother. She said, "Susan, what's going on?" I said, "Madison, I'll see you Sunday." She said, "Should I come?" I said, "Only if you want to." She came. I spent that week the way I spend the week before a deposition. I slept 7 hours a night. I drank water. I ironed 2 outfits and chose the second one. I did not look at my phone after 8 o'clock in the evening. I let it ring. By Saturday night, the cedar box was on my kitchen table beside my briefcase, beside the keys to my car. I went to bed at 10 o'clock. I slept 8 hours. I have not slept that soundly since I was 12. I want to take a moment to talk about my sister because I have not said enough about her yet, and I want to be fair. Vanessa Parker Holland by Saturday afternoon, I suppose she would prefer, is 3 years younger than I am. She has always been the easier daughter to love loudly, which my mother had mistaken for the only daughter to love loudly. As a child, she had asthma. As a teenager, she had anxiety. As an adult, she had a Bachelor of Arts in Communications from a small private school in Vermont, and then an MBA she had not paid for, and then a marriage to Brett Holland, who managed a restaurant in West Hartford and was, I think, doing his honest best. Vanessa is not a calculating woman. I want to be clear about that. She is not the kind of person who would have looked at the title transfer on 12 Maple Lane and asked questions. She had been told when she moved in 2019 that Mom was helping her get on her feet. She had not asked which feet or whose. She had accepted gifts the way she had been raised to accept gifts, as evidence of being loved. I do not blame Vanessa for not asking when she was 18. I do not blame her for not asking at 25. I do blame her for not asking eventually, after 30 years of being the daughter who received things. There is an age at which not asking becomes its own decision. She had reached that age some time ago. That Saturday, she texted me again at 6 o'clock in the evening. Just one line. "Whatever it is, can we be okay?" I looked at the message for a long time. I did not respond. I felt something resembling guilt about that for approximately 90 seconds. Then I closed my phone and I picked up the cedar box and I carried it to the front seat of my car. Sunday morning, December 14th, 6 a.m. I had laid out my clothes the night before. Black slacks, white silk blouse, navy blazer, the same outfit I wear to a deposition, because the same outfit means I do not have to think about what I am wearing while I am thinking about what I am saying. I made coffee on the same stovetop percolator my grandmother had taught me to use. I drank it black. I made oatmeal. I ate it slowly. I placed my briefcase on the kitchen counter and went through it one final time. Inside the briefcase, the original codicil, 3 pages, notarized, signed by my grandfather, witnessed by my grandmother and Gregory Howard. My grandfather's letter to me, 3 pages, handwritten, photocopied. The original was in a safe at Mason's office. The Hartford County Land Records for 12 Maple Lane, 8 pages printed at the office, highlighted in 3 places. The first national withdrawal history for account 4711, 12 pages tapped. The forensic accountant summary report, 3 pages on Mason's firm letterhead, cover page only. My grandmother Vivian's signed affidavit, 2 pages. The greeting card I had mailed Vanessa in October. Cream linen, gold sprigs. My grandmother had returned it to me 3 weeks earlier. She had been at Vanessa's house for Thanksgiving cocktails and had quietly slipped it off the counter into her purse while Vanessa was in the bathroom. Unopened, sealed, my handwriting on the front, still in its envelope. 1 thumb drive, backup of everything. The cedar box. I had emptied it. It was empty now. The empty space was, I had decided, the point. I closed the briefcase. I put on my coat. The cedar box rode in the passenger seat. I buckled it in. The briefcase went in the trunk. Mason had texted me at 5:30. Standing by. FaceTime at 2:05. You've got this. I had not asked for the encouragement. He had offered it anyway. I appreciated it. I started the car. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 1:58. There were 4 cars besides my father's. Vanessa's white Lexus. Brett's gray Subaru. Aunt Margaret's Volvo, which my mother had not been expecting until 2:15 and which had already arrived. And unexpectedly, my cousin Madison's red Jetta and my cousin Tyler's pickup. They had not been invited. They were here anyway. Word travels. I sat in my car for 30 seconds. I picked up the cedar box from the passenger seat. I took the briefcase from the trunk. I rang the doorbell. I had not rung the doorbell at my parents' house in 26 years. I had always walked in. My mother answered. She was in the cashmere sweater from the Instagram photo. She had makeup on for a Sunday lunch, which was unusual. She smiled at me the way she smiles when she is about to manage a situation. Sweetie, why are you ringing the bell? Come in. You're being so formal. Hi, Mom. I stepped inside. I did not hug her. I walked past her through the foyer into the dining room. Everyone was already seated. My father at the head. Vanessa to his right. Brett beside her. Aunt Margaret across from Vanessa. Aunt Lynn next to Margaret. Madison and Tyler against the wall in folding chairs they had pulled in themselves. A roast was on the table, untouched. Glasses of water. A breadbasket. I set the briefcase on the table in the empty space where the carving knife should have been. I set the cedar box beside it. I did not sit down. The room went still. My mother's face changed. I have rarely seen my mother's face change in public. She is very skilled at composure. The face she had put on at the front door, the managing face, the let me fix this face, slid away in 2 seconds. Underneath was a face I had not seen since the morning of my grandfather's funeral. She recognized the cedar box. Susan, she said. Her voice was lower. Where did you get that? From Grandma. When? Last month. My father set down his fork. I watched his eyes go to the cedar box, and then to my mother. He recognized it too. Aunt Margaret looked at my mother, looked back at the box, and said, Carol, what is this? My mother placed one hand on the back of her chair. Susan, sweetheart, whatever you think is in there, let's just sit down and have lunch, and then we can sit down, please. She did not sit down. I heard the front door open. I had not closed it all the way. My grandmother walked in. She was in her wool cardigan and a pair of low boots, and she had not knocked because she had told me she was not going to knock. She walked down the hallway, slow and deliberate. She stopped at the head of the dining room opposite my father. She set her purse on the sideboard. Then she looked at the room and said, in the same voice she had used on a Wednesday evening 28 days earlier, Come over alone. Don't tell your mother. A pause. That is what I had to say to my granddaughter to give her what was already hers. I opened the briefcase. I want to walk you through this carefully because I had rehearsed it. I had laid the order out 3 times the night before on my kitchen table. I knew which page came when. I took out the codicil first. 3 pages, notarized. I set it in front of my father, who was the closest. This is the codicil to Grandpa Ted's will. He signed it in March of 2015, 3 months before he died. It was witnessed by Grandma and by his attorney, Gregory Howaren. I took out my grandfather's letter. I placed it beside the codicil. This is the letter he wrote to me the same day. Grandma kept it for 11 years. I took out the county land records. These are the records for 12 Maple Lane, transferred to Mom in April of 2015 by small estate affidavit, sold to Vanessa in November of 2019 for $1. I set the printouts down. I took out the First National withdrawal history. This is the trust fund, account number 4711, balance March 2015, $185,000, balance today, 0. I took out the forensic accountant's cover page. I placed it on top. This is the report from a forensic accountant. Every withdrawal traced. Mom signed for each one as trustee. I did not say anything else. Vanessa was the first to speak. Her voice was thin. Wait. 12 Maple Lane. My house. Mom, what is my house? My mother did not look at Vanessa. She looked at the cedar box. I picked up my grandfather's letter. I began reading. I read the opening line. I read the line about him being proud of me. I read the line about him having waited until he was dying. Then I read the middle of page 2. I read it slowly. I did not raise my voice. He knew you'd be passed over. I looked up. My mother's hand was on the back of her chair. Her knuckles were white. I kept reading. Your mother loves you the way she knows how, which is less than you deserve. She has always told herself it was kindness, that your sister needed more. It is not kindness. It is a story she tells herself. I set the letter down. My mother said, Dad didn't write that. My grandmother said from the head of the table. I watched him sign it. So did Gregory. May Gregory rest in peace. My mother said, Dad would never. I reached into the briefcase. I took out the greeting card, the one I had mailed in October. Cream linen, gold sprigs, still sealed. I set it beside the codicil. 3 weeks ago I sent this. I wrote it with love. Vanessa, you never opened it. It sat on the counter of a house that legally belongs to me. Vanessa started crying. I didn't know. Mom, you said the house was... You said it was a gift. You said Aunt Margaret turned to my mother. Carol, did you? My mother snapped. She stood up. Her chair scraped the floor. After everything I have sacrificed for this family, after everything I gave up, you bring my mother into my house. You bring this. You stand in my dining room with a box. I did not raise my voice. You haven't sacrificed for me, Mom. You spent my money. Vanessa needed it. You were fine. You were always fine. I said it back to her. The same line, exactly the way she had delivered it on a Tuesday in October. I thought you'd be too busy. The room went silent. My phone vibrated in my blazer pocket. I took it out. I accepted the call. Mason Wheeler's face filled the screen. I held the phone up so the room could see him. Mason stated his name, his bar number, his firm. He said, a petition has been filed in Hartford Probate Court last Tuesday under seal. Notice will be served at this address by certified mail tomorrow morning. Carol, you will want to retain counsel today. My mother stared at the screen. You're suing me, she said. I'm unstealing, I said. There is a difference. My father had not spoken yet. He had been looking at his hands. He had hands like an engineer. Square fingers, the right thumbnail still slightly purple from where he had struck it with a hammer at Thanksgiving. He folded his napkin once. He folded it again. He looked up. Susie. Dad. I knew. My mother said, sharper than I had ever heard her. Richard, don't. He did not look at her. I knew about the codicil. Your grandfather told me the week before he died. He told me he had taken care of you. I told your mother to file it. She said she would. I should have made sure. I'm sorry, Susie. I looked at him for what felt like a long time. Probably it was 4 seconds. Dad, I appreciate you saying that. But you watched for 11 years. He nodded. He did not argue. I needed you to make sure. I know. I did not say anything more to him. There was nothing else I had a word for in that room in that moment. My grandmother said from the head of the table, Carol, you need to call a lawyer today. My mother sat down. She stared at the cedar box. She did not say anything. 6 months later, in the second week of June, the Hartford Probate Court entered judgment. The codicil was admitted. The small estate affidavit was vacated. The title to 12 Maple Lane was ordered transferred back to me. Vanessa was given 90 days to vacate. Brett found them a 2-bedroom rental in West Springfield. My mother was ordered to repay $47,000 in directly traceable household withdrawals. The court reduced the original demand because her attorney argued in good faith that the MBA had been completed and could not be unwound. I accepted the reduction. I had never wanted everything. I had wanted the truth on paper. 3 months after that, Vanessa's Lexus was repossessed. She had been refinancing the note for 2 years. When the trust money stopped, the math stopped. Aunt Margaret stopped speaking to my mother in March. Aunt Lynn stopped in April. My cousin Madison called me on a Wednesday in May and said, "I should have told you about the party the moment I posted it, and I'm sorry." I thanked her. I told her it was not her responsibility to know. My mother did not call me. My father sent me one text on my birthday in April. "Just thinking of you, Susie. Love, Dad." I did not respond. I have not responded yet. Vanessa sent me a letter in July, 3 pages, handwritten. I read it once. I placed it in a drawer. I have not decided what to do with it. My grandmother and I had dinner every Wednesday from January through May. We did not talk about my mother. We talked about her garden. I moved into 12 Maple Lane on the second Saturday of May. I gave my landlord in West Hartford 4 weeks' notice. I packed my IKEA dresser. I packed my Goodwill couch. I packed the 8 boxes of contracts textbooks I had been telling myself I would donate for 6 years. I rented a U-Haul. My grandmother drove down with a casserole and a thermos of coffee and supervised from a folding chair on the porch while 2 college students I had hired from a moving service carried everything in. The kitchen still smelled faintly like cedar. The porch railing was loose in one spot, the same spot my grandfather had been meaning to fix the summer he got sick. I bought a tube of wood glue at the True Value in Litchfield on a Sunday. I fixed it myself. The cedar box sits on the mantel of the living room, empty. The brass key rests in a small ceramic dish beside it. I have not used the dish for anything else. The greeting card I had written to Vanessa, my grandmother's affidavit having served its purpose, I took out one evening in June. I read what I had written. I smiled once because I had meant every word at the time. Then I put it through the shredder. It is October now, 1 year since the surprise party. I am sitting on the front porch of 12 Maple Lane. There is a mug of coffee on the railing. The maple trees my grandfather planted in 1974 are in their second week of color, the same way they were the morning I drove up to my grandmother's house. Madison called this morning. She asked if I wanted to come to her birthday gathering in November. I said yes. My grandmother is coming for dinner tonight. She is bringing the casserole. I think about something my grandfather said to me on this porch the summer I was 21, the summer before he got sick. He said, "Susie, the law is the only family that doesn't play favorites." He was wrong about that. My grandmother showed up too. I drink my coffee. Being called self-sufficient was never a compliment in my family. It was a permission slip to give me less. And the day I stopped accepting that permission, I did not have to raise my voice once. I just had to open a folder, set a cedar box on a dining room table, and let the documents say what I had spent 34 years being too composed to say out loud. That is my story. A cedar box, a brass key. 11 years that finally got their answer. If you have ever been the fine one, share this with someone who needs it.